a palace of perfume and putrefaction. Imagine entering the majestic halls of the Palace of Versailles in the 1600s, a place dripping with opulence. Golden walls, glimmering chandeliers, and fabrics so rich they could drape continents. The dazzling surface lurked an odor that could knock you flat, a blend of sweat, perfume, rot, and raw human filth. Welcome to the heart of French royalty, where elegance pirouetted alongside unspeakable grime. In this expose, we delve into the grim realities behind Versailles' gilded curtain. These are the 5 most disturbing hygiene practices endured by the noblewomen of France's most glamorous court. Prepare yourself, because you're about to see the royal life like never before. 1. Bathing, a dangerous luxury in an age when appearance was everything. You might assume that women of noble birth were models of personal cleanliness. But in 17th century France, bathing was considered suspicious, dangerous, even sinful. Medical authorities of the day believed warm water opened the skin's pores, letting in disease. Instead of removing dirt, a bath was thought to invite death. Religious leaders didn't help either. The church frowned upon the idea of nakedness, even for the sake of cleanliness. Bathhouses were considered places of vanity, temptation, and moral decay. So, what was the alternative? Rather than full-body bathing, most aristocratic women settled for what we'd call a dry rub today. They wiped their hands, faces, and maybe their necks with cloths dampened in vinegar, wine, or even saliva. No soap, no scrubbing, it's just a perfumed dab here and there. And on the rare occasions when a bath was unavoidable, it was usually communal. The entire household, men first, would take turns soaking in the same tub. By the time a noblewoman stepped in, the water would be tepid, murky, and likely loaded with residue from everyone before her. The result: the halls of Versailles, despite their beauty, often reeked. Visitors frequently noted the pungent air, a cloying combination of unwashed bodies, mildew, and spoiled perfumes. And yet royal women continued to powder themselves, layer their gowns, and pretend everything smelled like roses. Toilets, or the lack thereof. You might expect that a palace as grand as Versailles would feature modern plumbing. In reality, it was a sanitation nightmare. With hundreds of rooms and thousands of residents, Versailles had shockingly few toilets. Chamber pots, small bowls hidden behind curtains or tucked under beds were the norm. And when those pots filled up, the contents were dumped, often out of a window, into the gardens or onto the walkways. Unsuspecting passers-by risked more than just bird droppings falling from the sky. It was quite literally raining waste. The situation was so appalling that hallways themselves doubled as makeshift latrines. Nobles would relieve themselves in stairwells, corners, and even behind decorative screens. Men were seen urinating from balconies or into the hedges. It wasn't rare, it was the standard. Even the royal decree of 1715, which demanded that corridors be cleaned once a week, was seen as progress. Once a week. That was Versailles' idea of improved hygiene. As for toilet paper, it didn't exist. Leaves, rags, hay, or even bare hands were the tools of choice, and hand washing after often skipped entirely. Unsurprisingly, disease spread like wildfire. Worms, infections, parasites thrived in this biohazard masquerading as a palace. 3. Wigs and lice, fashion meets infestation. Versailles was a kingdom ruled by hair. Towering wigs were not only symbols of status but works of art. Some reached heights of 2 feet or more and featured intricate designed ships, flowers, even bird cages. But underneath this glamour was an ecosystem of horror. To achieve such volume, women piled their real hair over wire frames, stuffed it with horsehair, and slathered it all in animal fat, usually beef tallow. This greasy pomade helped shape and hold the structure. Unfortunately, it also made for a cozy, nutrient-rich habitat for lice. Hair was rarely washed. Wigs were seldom removed. Scratching was a delicate art, performed with ornate silver lice combs or long-handled claws designed for use in public. It wasn't uncommon to see a noblewoman pause, mid-conversation, to discreetly rake her scalp with one of these elegant tools. Some infestations grew so intense that lice would crawl down necklines or over collars, but still, fashion came first. A poorly maintained hairstyle could be socially fatal. Itching. And public humiliation were small prices to pay for keeping up appearances. And if the discomfort wasn't bad enough, wigs were also dangerous. Their size and flammability made open candlelight a constant threat. There are recorded instances of women's wigs catching fire at social events. Despite all this, no one dared to go without. 4. Food in kitchens. Poison on a silver platter. Royal feasts at Versailles looked like heaven. Mountains of pastries, roasted game, sugared fruits, and rivers of wine. But what guests didn't know was that the food was often a minefield of contamination. The palace's poor plumbing meant that waste frequently backed up into kitchens. On at least one occasion, raw sewage reached the private kitchen of Queen Marie Antoinette herself. Refrigeration didn't exist, and food sat out for days. Spoilage was common. Rats and insects roamed freely. Cooks had no choice but to serve food from filthy conditions. As a result, the nobility regularly suffered from diarrhea, vomiting, and food poisoning, but the worst offenders: intestinal parasites. Tapeworms were common, especially from undercooked meat. Even King Louis XIV wasn't spared. He once expelled a tapeworm over 6 inches long. Royal women had it worse. Dining was a performance, not just a meal. They were expected to eat delicately, smile, and flirt, all while battling stomach cramps, infections, or worse. But of course, acknowledging any discomfort would be unfashionable. Childbirth, pain, pressure, and a public stage, perhaps no experience reveals more about the brutal expectations of royal women than childbirth. In 17th century France, when a noblewoman gave birth, it was treated not as a private medical matter, but as a public event. Why? To ensure legitimacy. The fear that a stillborn child or a daughter might be swapped for a male heir led to extreme transparency. When queens went into labor, their chambers were filled with spectators, doctors, priests, noblemen, courtiers. Not to assist, but to witness. Imagine the terror and pain of childbirth while surrounded by a crowd. Marie Antoinette famously fainted during labor from the heat and stress. She wasn't alone. Women often collapsed, screamed, or suffered life-threatening complications while being observed like actresses on stage, and the risks didn't end there. With no understanding of germ theory, tools weren't sterilized. Doctors didn't wash their hands. Infections were common, and many women died from conditions that today are easily treated. 1 in 3 children didn't survive to age 3. Maternal deaths were alarmingly high. But to refuse childbirth, or to demand privacy? Thinkable. Conclusion: the hidden agony of glamour. We tend to imagine royal life as one of indulgence and luxury. Gilded gowns, extravagant balls, endless pampering. But behind Versailles' golden doors lay a world of rot, infestation, and suffering. The women who embodied grace and refinement were silently enduring lice, parasites, putrid smells, and public invasions of their most intimate moments. They were the ornaments of power, draped in jewels and bathed in admiration. But underneath the silken powder was a life that was messy. It's painful and horrifyingly human. So the next time you think of Versailles, don't just picture chandeliers and tapestries. Remember the stench. Remember the suffering. Because history isn't just elegant sometimes, it's downright filthy. Until next time, keep digging into the past. You might be surprised by what you uncover.